Welcome to Koffee Talks, a Pokémon card collecting podcast, featuring David Person, owner of the world's most complete English Pokémon card collection, and Dan Norton, a longtime collector with all the knowledge behind the cards.
Hello everyone, how is it going? Welcome back. Yes, it has been a little bit over a week since the last episode. We took a little bit of a break. We decided it was to try and get us back on schedule because we had a couple of weeks of recording late, and then we did this one and I've looked at the dates and I realized our next two recording days would be Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve, so God knows if we're actually back on schedule. My week has been not great. I've been in bed most of the week. I've been so ill. David, how's your week been? Better than mine, I hope.
Dan, it's got to be better than yours, my friend. I'm sorry for your ailments. You know, when you talk about skipping a week to get us back on schedule, it's an excuse my wife uses a lot when it comes to our intimacy. So
Jesus, okay.
yeah, it's kind of, oh, don't say that, David. We're going to be banned. Oh, just lay in bed, get 12 hours worth of rest. That's what you need right now. Okay,
First
Dan.
30 seconds, that was.
Okay, Dan, I got to get faster and faster. You know that the stroke of life is moving all the way through. So, Dan, how you doing, my friend? My you darn Macum. As everyone knows by now, the only time we get to see each other is on our podcast, and so it's just good to see, even if you're sick as a dog.
Yeah, that's where I've been at. I'm sick as a dog this week. I'm just hoping I can recover soon because we'll end of this week where the plan is we're driving down to stay with Laura's parents over Christmas and New Year. So I'm hoping I feel a bit more recovered by the time we do that.
No, it makes sense. I know spending time with my mother-in-law in the younger years was a way to get me recovered from anything that I was ailing from. So, well, you've really got this all planned out. Dan, I want to tell you about real quick. I got my Paradox Rift set on the way, and
Nice.
it didn't get here yet, so there's not a darn thing I can do about that. But hopefully by the next podcast. And what I want to say to our audience is that, you guys know now that I've got a new person or new people or new entities are going to make my sets going forward. I'm out there looking in the markets. And so occasionally I'm going to need pre-release cards, pre-release staff cards. If any of you folks are involved in any of that and can find it in your heart to give your Uncle Dave a shot at those cards for upcoming sets, I think I've got them for this one, the Paradox Rift, and I had them for the previous ones. But or especially if you have anything in the older days during the pandemic, anything that came out and that wasn't posted then and is supposed to be posted now. Dan can tell you about all that stuff when he's feeling better.
Yeah, the missing staff promos and stuff.
Yes, the missing staff promo. Please let us know. Please let me know. Definitely interested in trying to get some of that stuff for you guys. And then I do want to say one more thing before we roll into the podcast. This is called the intro section, where we just say nothing and hopefully it kills 3 to 4 minutes of time, maybe 5, because when Dan gets going, it's an extra couple of minutes. I started down the path of selling some of my extra cards because some good friends of mine, or a good friend of mine, a good friend of two of mine, several of my good friends have told me that, David, you're soon going to be either dead or retired. Not necessarily in that order. And so, Dan, I got through 3 minutes before I talked about death and mourning. And so just bear with me. Yeah, and it's longer than I got through the intimacy stuff. So here's the thing. I did sell like a Shadowless set box this week, a sealed Shadowless box. And so there are other things I have extras of. If you have interest and would like to reach out, let me know what you might be looking for. I'm definitely starting to put some money back in the bank towards retirement. What's nice, these are not my cheap deals. I'll be very honest with you, because what you get from me is you get the knowledge that what's in the box is what's supposed to be in the box, because I've held them for so long. But if it's something you're looking for, interesting, something to put in your collection, please let me know as well. Dan, that's all I got on the intro stuff. I like to get to the comments, but I don't want to cut you off because I know you and a box of tissues right now are best friends. So what are we doing, my friend? What are we doing? Comments? What do you want to do?
We'll go into comments, but I will say for most sets going forward, I can hopefully at least get you the regular pre-release promos for sets going forward, potentially the staffs as well. Paradox Rift was just a weird one where Laura didn't even get any staff ones herself this time because we were traveling in Europe when the pre-releases were happening. So it's the first one in quite a long time. She actually hasn't been staffed for any pre-release, but for ones going forward, I'll see what I can do for you as well. But yeah, let's get into some comments. We'll see what people have been saying.
Okay, sounds good.
Let's take a look at your comments.
All right, so a few comments to read out from last week. Obviously, we're at a point where we can't be reading out all of the comments, but we do say thank you to everyone who left a comment on the video. There was quite a lot last week. So the old card shop clarified that the podcast they do is virtual, so we don't have to go out to California to be on their podcast, which will be very good. We'll definitely try and arrange that sometime in the new year. Me and Dave will hopefully try and get on their podcast. They can come on ours. We'll have to check that out.
And Dan, what he was talking about me actually visiting the Napa vineyards to partake. That's what he was really talking about. You not so much, because we know you don't drink, Dan, unless it's chocolate milk and you're feeding the bear, or something that or whatever. I don't know. So can you feed a bear chocolate milk? Or do you have to beverage bear?
I can't drink milk. I can't drink milk. The bear drinks milk.
I know. I know about that. Okay.
Yeah.
Couple comments on this end. Number one, Craig Holmes. It's like the good old days, man. So good to have Craig back in there. He always likes to talk about the characters that I mentioned in the giveaways. So he talked about this week the War Turtle. Was it the War Turtle? I think it was.
Yeah.
And he said its feathery tail is a reference to Japanese legends of the Minnow game, a turtle which lived for 10,000 years and grew a tail made of seaweed. So you got to appreciate Craig, because he's a historical guy just like Dan, and someday I can't wait to watch him arm wrestle. Enjoy my night. I think it's enjoy the day, enjoy the night, but the Instagram is enjoy. Sent a picture of a Chen Pao EX card from the Singapore Regional League with a stamp on it, Singapore Regional League.
Yeah.
So that was really nice, because that's something that, we certainly don't have. And maybe Dan will post a picture or not. I don't care.
Yeah.
Okay. So Dan, will you talk to me, since this was a comment about what is the deal with regionals? I just don't understand. So years ago, there were regional tournaments, and I've got a bunch of regional stamped stuff in my collection, cards.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, do we still do regionals? Is there regionals in the States? Are these considered regionals? What are regionals? When's the last time a regionals was held? Why don't I know if I have any new regionals cards I need to be pursuing? Talk to me, Dan. Take a sniffle. Go.
Regionals have been going on basically since, I believe, the TPCI took over from WotC. It may have been a couple of years in, but it was, I guess at least I know 2005, 2006 season. I'm sure there were already regionals then. And they've basically always been regionals since. Recently, there have just always been the regular regionals promo and then the staff version of the promo for everything within the US and everywhere, basically around the rest of the world, other than these new Asian tournaments. And they'll normally be the same promo will last about a season. So it's not that every individual regional around the world is getting its own promo. Because, I mean, there's a regional about once every 2 or 3 weeks normally. So it's normally about a 3-month gap. All regionals will have the same promo, the same regular promo, and the same staff promo. Occasionally it will change language, just depending on where the regional actually is. I know some of the South American ones will have Portuguese promos rather than English. But these new Asian series tournaments they are classed as regionals, but they have a completely different promo run. Well, sort of, anyway. So for these ones, the player's promo has been Iono, and it has a little regional stamp which says the country of origin on it. Now, Iono has been a regionals promo for the rest of the world, but it just says regionals on it. It doesn't have any sort of country marker the way that these Asian ones do. And these Asian ones have had extra special promos for high-level finishers. So we know there's been a God of War EX for players who've got 5 or more wins, and then there are these Chen Paos for players that finished in the top 4. And because there are country markers on them, so it's the Singapore one actually says Singapore, there are 12 copies of each of these Chen Paos, and there are 4 different countries that run these Asian regionals that have these promos. So it's Singapore, Malaysia, Philippines, and Hong Kong EN. I can tell you for these ones, for Singapore, we've locked up our Ionos and we've locked up your God of War. We're still trying to get the Chen Pao. I have some contacts in Singapore for that. We're working on it. Malaysia, we have a contact over there, but even though the tournament has been run, no one has any of their cards yet. Even the players' promos, none of those have gone out to the players yet. And I've spoken to at least one person in the Philippines who's working on it with us for that. So that's what those are. I will say, obviously, everywhere outside of Asia, all there is the regular promo and the staff promo, and because they run over multiple events, they're very, very easy to get a hold of. Unless it's a super playable card, even the staff versions of those cards usually are about $30-$40 from what I've seen. They're not difficult to get a hold of. And the players' promos, once the season's ran out, they're about $10 a card. It's only these Asian series tournaments that we're having to worry about, and it's difficult to track down.
When was the last regionals that you guys went to or Laura went to? Was it the Pittsburgh?
No, Pittsburgh. When was Pittsburgh? I don't remember. The last thing we went to was out in Philadelphia. That was PAX. That wasn't a regionals. Last regionals we did, I don't think Laura's done one since we got back, so it would have been France was the last regionals we did out in Lille. And then I think there was a regionals. I mean, I think there was a regionals this weekend actually, but it was probably West Coast, which is why we didn't look at it. And then Laura's got some booked in for January, I believe, that she's going to be working at.
Okay. All right. Good. Thank you for all the clarification. I appreciate it. So more comments. PAX of Norway. I want to thank PAX of Norway, Jorgen, for letting me know the heads up on the card that I was able to win at auction. He put his card at auction under PWCC. And it was ironically the card that I'm going to show it later on in the podcast, but basically it was the card that I actually got ripped off from Albert Swain of the UK. So, but I was able to get my money back, thank goodness, in that situation. And I used the money I got back to actually repurchase the card from a legitimate seller named Jorgen. So thank you for letting me know about the auction you were running. We'll show the card in a little bit on the Look What I Found segment.
Cool.
Jeffrey Lamar Kaiser said that he was talking about loving the offer on the Worlds cards we made on the last podcast. And he said, so cool that there are that many languages that Pokemon print cards for. I was talking about the 10 different languages or 9 different languages or 107 different languages that the sealed promo packs from 2022 Worlds came in. And he said, I recently tried to get all of the 151 and Obsidian Flame Ninetales cards in all the printed languages and still have a few left to find. It can make collecting a certain Pokemon challenging and fun. What a great idea, and I've seen some of the older cards in different languages that I've mentioned in previous podcasts a long time ago. If I weren't just an English collector, because that's enough to be on my plate, I would love to do that. There's so many colorful versions of some of these different cards in the different languages. So I just thought it was a fantastic idea to try to come up with your own way or own bent or slant on your collection that might be interesting and make it more interesting and fun for you.
Yeah, I think a lot of people who do, the species collection where they collect one certain Pokemon, generally they will start off just doing English and Japanese, or start with one of them, then go into the second. But then eventually you'll see a lot of them start to branch out into these other languages. Just because when you're only collecting one species, especially if it's, I guess Ninetales, has a lot going on for it, but especially if it's a more recent Pokemon, Gen 4, Gen 5, even later, there probably aren't that many cards to be chasing, so it's not too bad for actually trying to finish all of the Pokemon, like every version of the card in English and Japanese, so then you get to add on that extra stuff for a bit more of a challenge. So there's a lot of people doing that, and it's always really cool to see when someone finishes it off.
A little bit more affordable too, right, Dan? Because I think that, if you had to go back, I don't know when Ninetales appeared first. Well, probably in the very first set. So
yeah, base set. Ninetales was in the very first set.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you were looking at even going back through the EX era and all that stuff, just collecting English, would still be a handful from a financial standpoint, hollows, reverse hollows, all that stuff. So this is another way
if you started
to
now,
do something more affordable.
If you started now, it would definitely be an expensive one just to be picking up. I mean, any Pokemon from Generation 1 or 2, once you lean into that, having first edition Wizards of the Coast cards is going to be a big chunk of money to try and pick stuff up.
Right. Anthro Collectibles said, thank you for reaching out and for your message. Being a small collector from Sweden makes it difficult at times to participate in the hobby. your message and videos makes us feel included in the community. I thought that's really neat. And we definitely try to establish a community out here, Dan and I. So thank you for that nice message.
Yeah.
Walrus Tank came in for the E4 and pre-release drama and have been watching ever since. Going back and catching up from episode 1 slowly. Keep it up, and I hope you guys can continue to deliver weekly next year. That's really all dependent on Dan. Dan's got me under a very substantially restrictive contract, so I'm going to be here no matter what. But hopefully, if Dan can just pull his weight and get his act together, he'll be here with me because he's the only one that can film the podcast. So in a sense, if he's not, I'm not on anyways. But thank you. And Dan mentioned the old card shop, Joshua Archibald. So we are going to be on his podcast. At least I'll be on there. If I can bring Dan along, maybe. If he just wants me, I'm just going to go on. But then I'll promote it on Koffee Talks, which will be advantageous for Dan as well. So that's going to happen soon from our friend in the Napa Valley of California. On one last comment before Dan jumps into the video comments, I will say this. I'm always so thankful to those of you that take the time and effort to share our podcast with any and all of your followers. So here's a list of those folks that did that this week. Thank you so much. Stamped Collector Elliot, TCG Cross Collector. His name is Jacinto, but also mainly goes by Cross. A lot of new overseas viewers came from his share. Dank Cards Connecticut. Thank you for your share. BizCash Cards, Jack from Ohio. I think he was last week's winner. Not this week, but last week. The old card shop, which we mentioned, TCG Bulls, Live to Laugh to Love, the the numbers 2, Live to Laugh to Love, great name. Jacopo, otherwise known as Collector Cards Perugia, Low Budget Squirtle, which didn't matter about his budget, he still shared us. Thank you. Kane the Gamer, I looked this guy up, very much the gamer. Yuki's Kanto Hustle, the guy hustled us up for his views. TCG Kirby, Berkey's Sexclusive by Drex, like I told you. No idea if they're involved in Pokemon cards, but their fashion line's incredible. And Chris Ando. So thank you very much to all of those folks for doing that.
Yeah, we always love when people are willing to share this stuff out. It is one of the best ways you can support the podcast, as well as, just listening to it yourself. Just get it out there, let other people listen to it, and hopefully we can grow that audience, just get more eyes on it. But yeah, I do have some other comments I want to mention from the video. First of all, comes from 330 Gamescom, which I know is AJ, who actually ran the Play Lab that Laura was working out at PAX. Mentioned that they did actually have the raid promos early on in the weekend, which was the Pikachu, Dreadnought, Alcremie. I didn't realize that they had those because he said they ran out pretty quickly, and Laura didn't mention to me that they had them until after I recorded. So there's that. Quilly
Dan, would you call that a failure on your part to execute on a plan of acquisition and possibly a negatively impactful failure as well? Dan, take responsibility. What do you say?
Well, I don't think it was a failure in acquisition because they weren't actually promos that we needed. Me, you, and Laura, we already have our copies of those promos. I do have yours still here next to me in your pile to bring out with me. So if I knew that we were still needing raid promos, I would have made sure I found out early, and Laura would have told me if they had them, if she knew we still needed them. But the fact that we had them, it wasn't too bad. It's a little bit of misinformation that I wanted to just correct.
All right. Okay. But don't let Laura off the hook. I think she should be carrying her weight just a little bit more, Dan. Just something to think about. All right. Go ahead.
Quilly B has a good one. Says, it blows my mind how many niche promos exist, even just in English. Yeah, there's a lot of very, very cool promos, and some promos that are way too niche and way too annoying and hard to find. There are too many niche promos. We do need to scale it back a little bit. Says, would love to hear about y'all's methods for keeping track of everything that you're missing and the systems used to identify and fill any holes that exist in the collection. Genuinely, I just kind of remember what we need. Sort of. My tracking is awful. I have loads of notebooks. I have loads of piles of cards and stuff around. But for the most part, when it's weird niche stuff, I have a mental checklist of what me, Laura, and David need. If there's stuff where there's like a ton out there and it's not going to be difficult to get, I don't keep track of it too much. Like, I know David's still missing some regionals promos and stuff like we talked about. The ones from not the Asian ones, the rest of the world ones. I just need to get to David's binders, which I'll do sometime in the new year. When we visit him, I'll check exactly what he needs and make a list. But those I know aren't going to be difficult to find, so I haven't been trying to keep track of them too much. But the things that I know that are difficult to find, I remember, basically. I just keep a mental checklist, and I know that if they ever pop up, I know that I need to go out and buy them. So that's the way
to do that, by the way. Thank goodness for the brain of a supercomputer inside this guy over here, Dan. But none of you should do that. Create a spreadsheet, put something on it, update it periodically, look at it occasionally, fill in something every once in a while. And can you imagine that I'm completely reliant on Dan Norton of Midwest Ohio to keep all of this in his head, to continue to portray me as the English #1 most complete collection. What am I doing? This is, I can't. I'm not going to rant this early. Just go ahead, Dan. More comments, please.
Pokepop jumped in to say that the Pokemon side events at PAX are run by Card Titan, and by him, I think I said Pastimes. They were the ones running the Magic ones, but it was Card Titan who ran the Pokemon side events. I was really tired after PAX. Next up, what else have we got?
Hold on a minute. So that's where we say. So Dan would like to sincerely apologize for that misstep or misspoken name, and thank you to all those that took the time and effort, like Card Titans or whatever their actual names were, to run those events. And thank you to Pokepop for pointing it out, and also for your involvement in the hobby in all these years, and for clarifying the information, and for your involvement in the event as well. Okay, go ahead now, Dan.
Laura also Laura left a comment just saying to anyone concerned, her tax accountant is a Pokemon organizer, so everything was above board, and my involvement in the taxes is almost zero. All I do is once a year I go and sign my name at the end. I was trying to just be a little bit funny in last week's podcast and accidentally implicated Laura in tax fraud, which she is not committing. Everything's fine. It was just,
Dan, and what does it even mean? I mean, her comment, so my tax accountant is a Pokemon organizer. That is such a crock of baloney and salami. It doesn't even mean anything. You know what? Do you know that every single card that has come out into the Pokemon hobby over the last 25 years has come through someone's back door? So you're going to tell me that the Pokemon organizer and is going to be a committed member of the fraternal community of doing everything perfectly? No.
He's
What?
No, he's an organizer. He's one of the tournament organizers. He doesn't work for Pokemon.
I don't care if he's an organizer. His hand is in someone's pocket that I want to be in that pocket to get something from that pocket that my collection needs. So don't just discount and say, oh, that's a Pokemon organizer. He's above board. I know presidential candidates that may not be above board. I can't get into politics right now. Okay, go ahead, Dan.
He doesn't have stuff that you need. I would know about it if he did.
Fair enough. Good point. That's all that matters at the end.
Yeah, there's a lot of other comments. There's Matty's talking about moms and mams and Yorkshire puddings and stuff. People can go and read that if you want. There's one more I want to read from Jeffrey Hurtgen. Says, agree with Dan, the shiny sets are getting kind of boring. This new one is much less original. Yeah, I'm glad to see that I'm not the only one on that. And we'll see more of that as it's coming out. We'll talk more about that as it comes out towards January time or whatever, I think. But yeah, that was a nice little selection of comments. As I said, I've had no sleep and I'm dying. It's one of those weeks.
Yeah, Dan, but they can't be an ongoing excuse. At some point, get some sleep, because people are going to stop watching the podcast because I can't carry the weight of your pink-haired head. All right, I'm going to throw a few more comments in here just so I got it in front of me. Things I just wanted to say real quick. Your average player, thank goodness that you know who your bread is buttered from, because it's Dan and me and not that deranged guy over on the other side. And if you don't think so, then don't butter your bread. Just toast it and eat it. It's healthier that way anyways. Let's see. There's some great comments on here from Willie Chames, who said, you know what, like we are the he hasn't missed a podcast since they came out. He loves the combination of the smarts, my wit, my good looks, and Dan just sitting there and taping. It may not have gone exactly like that. There may have been some other stuff about Dan. I don't want to talk about it. Let's see. Chris Ondo said, you know what? He agreed the Pokemon Center needs a lot of work. If you don't agree that the Pokemon Center needs work, get off because you're not living in reality. Okay. Let's see. Okay. So Neusser PXZ said Trainer A and B is just a Dan Rose session, LMAO. And I said, thank goodness somebody finally figured that out. That's the whole fun of it, guys. If you can't have fun once a week, then you should be having fun more than once a week or possibly less. And then Dan always going to talk about Jeffrey Hurtgen giving a comment, but I don't think I heard him read this Jeffrey Hurtgen comment. Dan is so wrong. That Rocky and Bullwinkle that Rocky and Bullwinkle movie is so fantastic. Okay. And they said, I love that movie. So yes, you know that stuff. Okay. And let's see, there was someone on here that somebody said, oh, Rusty did comment. I think it's important to address that. He said, I do have a Patreon. People pay for certain aspects of my time. I wasn't trying to indicate that Rusty didn't have a Patreon. It's just that he had said, look, it's not a big thing of his anymore, as it again has fizzled to a certain degree, not because of fizzling due to the content and you wanting to watch it, but just because he's got plenty of other things to worry about. And his biggest thing isn't necessarily making money from a Patreon. That's all that I was going to say there. Let's see if I have anything else here. Let's see. Okay, and then there was really a nice comment from a gentleman named Larry Cuate, and he said YouTube recommended the podcast for him, which was cute, and he was happy. And he's just gone back into a situation where his parents, unfortunately, destroyed, or there was a situation where the cards are gone from his youth. And what he's done is he's starting to build the collection back again and actually starting to play again. And he was playing in some regional tournament or some tournaments in Sacramento and having some initial success and telling me about that. So that was really cool. This week as well, a person named Justin reached out to me. If you guys, I've asked you to reach out to me and talk to me if you have certain questions or things I can help you with. His was about collecting and some other things he was looking to acquire. And I was not that responsive to Justin. So the good news was he kept pushing on me because sometimes I do get busy. And if you keep pushing, don't give up. I will get back to you at some point. Just sometimes things are going on. But we had a good discussion about his collection, acquisition, and, a 23-year-old kid that's got, tons of, well, let me just say this, his collection far surpasses Dan's. So it's, just nice to know that there's some real nice stuff out there. So. Okay, Dan, I'm done. I could go on forever because we have such nice viewers and they take the time to make comments and stuff. And thanks to everyone who puts a comment in the videos. We read them, we discuss them, and then we ignore them from that point forward. So thank you.
Yeah. I would say if anyone noticed me randomly turning around during that, one of my neighbors has started revving up some motors or something outside. My neighbors directly across the road run some sort of chop shop out of their garage. They're just revving cars constantly. It's an absolute nightmare. Anyway, should we move on to the what's next? The giveaway, the drawing of the winner, and that. All right.
Yes, let's do that. Let's do it now before you start to go out and try to hurt the neighbors.
So, who won last week's giveaway?
All right, it's that time. It is drawing winner. I'm supposed to deliver this with excitement. I wrote it down. I wrote down act excited. So I really should. Why would I not be excited? Somebody's getting something for free, or they're not. I don't really know. But last week, I think it was Jack from Ohio, BizCash Cards, that got something. And this is the craziest thing I've got to tell you guys, this entire podcast. Jack claims he actually received a card from me. So that is, I don't even know what to do with that. You guys know I don't actually send anything out. I can't, because I could, but I can't. I won't, but I should. So Jack got something. It's fun. All right, this week we had 22 participants in the weekly drawing, and with the drum beat of a drum roll of a drum thing with the random.org generator, because they use wind or something to actually make sure it was random, the winner this week was Jeffrey Hurtgen, who actually has had his name mentioned this week in this podcast a couple times. So I think Jeffrey Hurtgen's like a judge, or he wants to be a judge, or he's hoping they hire him to be a judge. He and I are going to drink heavily at Worlds if they invite him to be a judge in Hawaii. If they don't, I won't see him there. Or unless I don't go, and then he'll be there and we won't see each other. So congratulations to Jeffrey Hurtgen. who won this week's drawing for something that I'll put in the mail or won't to send to him or someone else as soon as possible or not for a while. And I'm looking forward to his reaction if he does or doesn't get anything. Again, 22 total participants. It's a lot more than that. It's about 50% more than the first one of the week before. So congratulations to all of those who participated. And I hope you'll participate again in the following week. Don't forget how you participate in these things. You have to climb into my DMs. What I'm going to tell you is I will guarantee you personally that there's some of the most incredible DMs you've ever experienced. Okay. So get in there and enjoy yourself. Do not place the requested information that you will receive later on in this podcast into the comment section of our video, because then everyone will see what you have to find out later on. You don't do that. Leave a real comment on the video or something that acts like a real comment that you actually seem like you watched the video. And then go into my DMs, get into them. We'll put on pajamas together. We'll pop some popcorn. We'll watch movies. And in there, tell me the name and number of a Pokemon character that you will find out about later on in the podcast. And the video, and that'll all come later. So it's pretty simple stuff. If it's not simple, then just message Dan, because he's got the actual formal rules. If you do post in the comment section the number and name of the character, you'll be disqualified from ever watching the podcast again. You'll be blocked. Okay, if that's possible. If it's not, then you won't be blocked. It's just a threat to be blocked. So I'm sorry for any threats that aren't actually valid or real. Dan, what else? You want to go on to the deal of the podcast, or you want to talk about any of that? Or you want to say congratulations to Jeffrey Hurtgen?
Yep. Congratulations, Jeffrey. Be sure to, post on Instagram, tag us in the podcast, whatever, when you receive whatever it is David is going to send to you. Yeah. Do you want to go on your deal of the podcast, David?
Oh my goodness. I think I should.
It's time to find out David's deal of the episode.
So this is our new segment. It's been going so wonderful. I thank everybody that's been participating. I think a couple podcasts ago, I did, I don't know what I did a couple podcasts ago. Dan, I don't remember.
I think it was the world's English one from
World
2016,
2013
like
English.
that.
Yes, 2013 English Players Copy. A lot of folks took advantage of that. That was nice. And then this past time, it was the 2022 sealed promo pack from World. So thanks to everyone who reached out and was able to get one of those at hopefully a substantial discount to the market. Today's deal of the podcast, I'll have Dan post the picture, is the 2022 Pokemon, because this is a Pokemon podcast. It's not Lorcana. I'm not doing a Lorcana or Lorcana deal, guys. If you want that, ask the pink-haired fellow from the UK who's sitting in a Midwest Ohio thing where the neighbor across the street is buzzing up a bunch in a chop shop. Okay, this is the Pokemon Friends in Galar Professor Program promo card. 140 of 172. That's because it's from a set. It's a variant. It's got stamps. You're going to see a picture. And it's the top 8 version. It's the top 8 stamped award winner in near mint or better condition. Dan's going to tell you about this card in a minute. I don't even know what it is. Because I would if Dan made a spreadsheet and I could put it on the spreadsheet and I would know what's on the spreadsheet that I need or don't need. Apparently I have this card. That's how I have a couple of extras.
This one is on the spreadsheet. You just don't update the spreadsheet.
Okay, guys, I don't update the spreadsheet. I don't know how to get to the spreadsheet. I don't know where the darn spreadsheet is. But someday when Dan visits me and after the new year, I'm going to find out where the spreadsheet is, how to look at it. So the current lowest price for this card on eBay is $1,000 before taxes. $1,000. I did look out on eBay and found a completed sale back on October 14th from the UK for $850 all in after taxes and shipping. I'm going to be offering this wonderfully beautiful card with a top 8 stamp on it today, all expenses included, for $425. $425. I'm going to be at half of the eBay price. As usual, your payment must be by Zelle or PayPal, friends and family only. That's it. Please don't ask me for anything else, because then I'd have to say no, and then we'd be fighting, and I don't want to fight with you guys because I love you all. You message me on Instagram at dperson1 if you have interest in the card, as many of you have done on the other things. There is very limited availability, as you can imagine. Dan, will you tell the folks that are watching what this Professor Program stamped Friends in Galar top 8 card is all about? Who got it, who didn't get it, where it came from, whatever?
So this came from the Professor Cup, which is a tournament that only professors can enter. And the first year of running the cup, it was this Friends in Galar promo. There was a unstamped one that had the professor logo for playing in the cup. There was a staff one. For the first year, the staff one was incredibly rare. They only sent out one to the organizers. So the staff one is very hard to find for the Friends in Galar. Then the top 8 was for everyone who made top 8 of the tournament. And there was a champion stamped one for the winner also. I will say for the first year that they did this, for the Friends in Galar year, they did combined top 8s between the different events. So each Professor Cup would have a TCG section, VGC section, and I think a Go section, and they would do a combined top 8. For future years, which is the year that we're just coming to the end of now, I think they did Friends in Haisu and Friends in Sinnoh. Those had separate top 8s at each of the Professor Cups, so there was a lot more of those available. But the Friends in Galar it's a pretty rare one. It's one you're not going to see too often. I think there was 7 or 8 different events run, so obviously 8 copies at each of those different events.
So Dan, I mean, you can be honest because most of the time you are to a fault. Just recall our E4 broadcast. Dan, do you think is my price a reasonable price? If I'm should I charge more? Is $425 too good a deal to give our audience on an $850 last sale after 2 months ago eBay previous sale thing?
I mean, I think it's definitely a good deal. I think someone will take it during the week. Is this one where you just have one extra copy for sale, or do you have a couple this week?
I would have a couple of this one, yes.
Okay.
So it is first come, first served as always. And Dan, since you brought that up and you brought up that the different TCG, VCG, VGC, and TGG, PPP, Dan, is the do you have friends in all of those different places, Dan?
I have friends who play TCG and VGC, yeah, and I know.
No, I wasn't
some
talking about
people
that. No, I'm not talking about
What are you
TCG and
talking about,
VGC. Although I did allude to that, which was kind of misleading. Dan, I mean, do you have friends in Galar, Sinnoh, and Haisu? Do you have friends in all those places?
Sure. Let's say that I have that.
Okay. And I mean, Laura doesn't, right? I mean, this is another thing we can hold over her head. These are really your friends, not hers, correct?
Well, Laura is the one who's actually played the games that take place in those regions, so. And Laura is the only one of the two of us who could actually earn these cards for herself because she is a professor and I'm not.
All right. Laura, listen, I love you. I'm having fun at your expense, and I shouldn't since you get to make the final determinations of whether or not I get a chance to get one of any 3 cards you guys ever realize. So my sincere apologies. Hopefully Dan will delete out this part of the podcast, bleep accordingly, and even it'll hit the edit floor. So I hope things are going well for you, hon. Make sure Dan's feeding the dogs all the time. Dan, we could do Trainer Deck A or B. There's no reason not to.
All right, let's go into that.
It's time to play Trainer Deck A or Trainer Deck B.
All right, well, it's that time that I have come to dread during the podcast. It is Trainer Deck A or Trainer Deck B, a weird either-or game that Dave likes to add a ton of unnecessary rules to. So, David, why don't you tell people what your idea of this is?
Yeah, Dan, you don't have to play, but you should. And I don't even care if you do or don't, but if you don't, there's going to be trouble. So, Dan, it's Trainer Deck A or B. You got to make a selection, give an explanation for that selection. Dan, you only have 10 seconds to do so. If you don't give an explanation, that's fine. Nobody cares. But if you do give one and it exceeds 10 seconds, which why is that a rule? Because then you'd have an incentive not to give anything so you don't lose the game. But anyways, you could be disqualified, Dan, for any maneuvers that are considered out of sort. And then you won't be able to attend Worlds in Hawaii in August of next year. And other than that, we should just move along. I tried to shorten it this time for you, Dan, because Laura called me and said, if you go on too long with this, he really is sick and you will make him even sicker. So Dan, here we go. We'll just start right into it. There were a couple of comments that asked me, could I make this game more about Pokemon cards? And I promise in the future that I will. But I, too, have other responsibilities, folks. And the amount of weight that you guys put on my shoulders expecting this podcast to be your highlight of the week, just stop. Just stop. It's not time for my rant yet, so I have to hold back. Just, David, take a breath. Just one sec, guys. Okay. All right, I'm back. So yeah, let it go and let's get started. Dan, chimpanzee or orangutan?
Orangutan. What? I don't even remember what the Pokemon name is. I know you didn't pronounce that Pokemon name properly, but I can't even remember what the Pokemon name is. But I'll go with that.
I didn't do any Pokemon names. I just put chimpanzee or orangutan. I just thought about. I don't think it is a Pokemon, and if it is, it is. That's
like
not what I did. I wouldn't. That's just monkeys.
Yeah, it's a Rangaroo, isn't it? Oh, great start. All right, we'll go orangutan.
So Dan, I'll try to give you an easier one, okay, buddy? Roses or daffodils?
Roses.
All right. So the way that you hesitated means to me that didn't come to you just in a quick blink of an eye. Make sure you're trying to really focus on the roses or some kind of Pokemon other item for your lovely wife when birthdays, anniversaries, and other Valentine's Day type stuff comes. Dan, abilities or attacks?
Abilities. In Pokemon, I find when you're playing, the abilities are normally the more interesting thing. That's normally what you end up building your deck around quite often, is Pokemon with certain abilities.
And why is it more interesting, Dan? What does interesting mean?
Just because there's more freedom of the things that they can do. Because when you're attacking, it's your active Pokemon that's doing it. It requires the energy, and it's probably doing some damage, potentially having an additional effect. But with abilities, you can get a lot more stuff going with it. You can have Pokemon on your bench can activate abilities that can be Pokemon as soon as you play them. You can have an activated ability. There's a lot of cool stuff going on.
It's so funny. I bet you that explanation would have been so much more detailed and interesting for the viewers if it had been about Lorcana. Dan, ancient or future?
Ancient. You're not getting an explanation on that one. Just going ancient.
Which is fine. I have up to 10 seconds to wait to see if you're going to deliver one, or I can possibly silently pressure you into giving one. You didn't bite, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Dan, technical machine cards or Pokemon tool cards?
Pokemon tools. Again, I think there's generally more interesting ones that I remember having played myself. I've played more interesting tools than I have TM cards.
All right. Dan, by the way, I'm going to call that one was actually incorrect, Dan. And you can't have any incorrect answers in this game, so that you have to really be bad to get an incorrect answer. Dan, technical machine cards are Pokemon tool cards, okay? So just in the future, put that 2 and 2 together and stuff that up your Yorkshire pudding butt, okay? Dan, Jack be nimble or Jack be quick? Nimble is Nymble.
Nimble, I guess. Yeah, I like that you spelled it out, so I knew that it was the Pokemon name.
Yeah, you know what Jack ultimately did, right?
Something about a candlestick.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Is that one of those ones where it's secretly about Jack the Ripper? Because there's a lot of those. There's a lot of those nursery rhymes mention a guy called Jack, and I know some of them are secretly about Jack the Ripper.
No, we're not going to go into any of your conspiracy theories. Don't make me ban this podcast against you when you don't want it banned in your own stuff. Dan, leave the crustal on or cut the crustal off?
Cut the crustal off.
Yeah, I figured that was going to be your answer since you don't drink milk. Dan, gas or electric?
Electric.
And does that extend to vehicles as well, Dan?
It would if we could afford an electric vehicle, but we have a hybrid at the moment. We have a Prius, so.
Oh, congratulations, Dan. That's very nice. So it's kind of a little bit of both. Dan, canned corn or corn on the cob?
Corn on the cob. Just tastes nicer, I think.
Does it need to be organic, Dan, or can you just do regular, non-organic corn on the cob?
I can just do regular. Yeah.
Are you not worried about the pesticides?
No. I put worse stuff in my body than pesticides. Like, drink Coca-Cola, that's probably got way worse stuff in it than a few pesticides.
All right. You know what, Dan? The first step to fixing things is admitting when you have a problem. So the Coca-Cola admission was a big revelation for you. Not as big as the whole E4 thing, but we'll move on from there. Dan, lightly scrambled or over easy?
Lightly scrambled. If I'm having eggs, my preferred way of eggs is sunny side up, or soft boiled so you can dip toast in them. But of those two, I'll go with scrambled.
Soft boiled eggs, man, that's a lost art. People don't know how to make those things. And when I was a kid, my dad and mom would make those for me. Darn, those things taste good, and they are great for dipping.
let me tell people, is you boil the water, you put the eggs in 3 minutes, and then, important step, drain the boiling water out, and then immediately run the eggs under cold water. Because if you just take the eggs straight out of the boiling water and you put them onto the egg cup, it's still hot, the egg's still going to keep cooking itself. You got to run it under cold water first so the egg stops cooking, it's cooking itself by the time you cut the top off, and then you slice up your toast real nice and you dip it in. It's how you make soft-boiled eggs.
Dan, are we going to extend this podcast to some kind of cuisine-related, once a week type thing as well? Do you want to have a podcast recipe of the week, and you can do a cooking segment inside of your kitchen?
If we do, you've got to kill off some of your other sections because we can't just keep adding. we've got to get rid of something. Something's got to give.
I don't mind listening to myself for several hours. Dan, are you saying others won't like it?
I'm saying we run out of time on the recording if we do any more.
Oh, good point. The whole recording logistics. All right, fair enough. Yeah, it makes sense, Dan. Dan, can I tell you that I've never cooked an egg like that for myself?
Have you cooked eggs like that for someone else, or just had people make it for you?
Yeah, no, I have people make it for me. I have a wonderful wife. She cooks for me, Dan. I'm not good in the kitchen. I'm great getting in there and then putting a plate of food together and then eating it, but that's about it. It extends to me. Sorry, Dan. Dan, and by the way, you really sound like you know what you're doing in there. So that may be the third strength of your personality, other than Pokemon and Lorcana.
Dippy eggs is one of my specialities.
Okay, great. It might even be one of your specialties as well. Dan, sleeping on the right or left side of the bed?
Right if you're facing the bed, left if you're on your back on the bed.
I love that, because you can't ask that question. No one likes, only you would define what the right or left side is and how you determine it. That's so cool, buddy. I mean,
it differs. Like, which way you're going by. Like, it's different depending on what your perspective is.
Yeah, you're 100% right. Really good. That's why I know your brain is storing all those Pokemon stuff. It doesn't forget. And by the way, also, you may want to know an elephant never forgets. I don't know what they're remembering, but they say that. Dan, reading, writing, or arithmetic?
Reading. I don't do it as much as I should because I do video crap now, but I do enjoy reading when I get a chance to sit down and to read something.
Okay. Dan, walk or run?
Walk.
Dan, run in the sense of runs leads me to the next question. So good luck. Diarrhea or constipation?
Jesus, David. Constipation, I guess, because I have it less frequently because I have IBS.
Yeah, that's the right answer. Dan, no matter what, that is the correct answer. Anybody watching, if you answer diarrhea rather than constipation, I'm going to encourage you to get checked by some kind of doctor that works down there. Dan, tell all or tell none?
Tell all. You might as well tell everything.
You are such a big mouth. I thought you could keep a secret. That's ridiculous. All right. Dan, booster box set cards or promotional box variant cards?
I like variant cards. We'll go variants.
That's nice. Dan, donating plasma in a storm or storming into the plasma donation center?
Donating plasma in a storm. I did
try to donate. Difficult?
I did try to donate plasma like last week. Was it plasma I tried to donate? No, it was no. Ignore that. It was platelets. It was platelets I tried to donate, and they couldn't find a vein. They couldn't get it going. It was right before. I've already talked about this because it was before the last one. It was why I was knackered for the last episode we recorded. So
you had all those bandages on your arm.
Yeah, because they tried to find a vein in my right arm and they couldn't.
So why did you pick that? Why would you, if they couldn't find a right vein in your right arm and your left arm when you're sleeping on the left side of the bed, looking from your back outward to the TV, how can you think that it's going to be good to donate plasma in a storm?
Well,
you can even donate plasma in a sedentary facility where it was climate control.
Well, both of the things you said were about donating plasma, so not that I was trying to donate plasma anyway. I said it wasn't plasma; it was platelets I was trying to donate. Should we end this and start talking about Plasma Storm, shall we?
Oh, that's it. Plasma Storm. Oh, yeah. That's what you want to talk about this week. Okay, sure. Let's do that.
I'm sure people have figured that one out.
I don't know, Dan. Have you ever seen Stephen Kassoon? The guy struggles a bit as far as that guy's got some issues, man. Love you, Steven. I'm just teasing. Don't send me a message. I swear to God, I don't know. I'm not going to do anything.
And now for our highlighted cards of the week.
So, if you didn't get it from whatever that was, we're going to be talking about Plasma Storm today. David has decided that's the set he wants to talk about. Plasma Storm is a set, came out February 2013. I'm looking down because I just have all my notes and stuff down here. It's from the Black and White era, came towards the end of the Black and White era. So, David, tell me, what did you like about the set? Why did you want to pick this one?
Dan, the first thing that I liked is I liked that this whole plasma idea, Storm, Freeze, and some other name, are all Blast, I guess, are all kind of this integrated little set of 3 plasmas. And Storm was first, I guess, I hope, I think.
Yeah.
And then I was looking through it and I saw these textured art cards. And I started to think, gosh, I wonder when the first they're beautiful cards, the textured arts, when did they first come out? Was it in this set or a couple of sets before? And these are all part of this black and white type of era. Is that correct?
Okay, so for the textured gold cards, like the textured golden trainers, the first one, there was one in Dark Explorers, which was about a year before Plasma Storm. I think 1 or 2 in Boundaries Crossed, which was the set before as well. And there were a few different shiny Pokemon going from, I think it was around Next Destinies onwards, which had a similar sort of textured design. They were right at the end of the set, same as the golden trainers. But yeah, well, this was only, I think, the 3rd set to feature those textured golden trainers. And that's a very big collectible part of this era, are those golden trainer cards.
Okay. Dan, talk about the you know what, Dan, don't talk about anything. Just stop. Hold the presses. I need to deliver the audience some information right now. Da. Okay, this is for the giveaway for this week. The character is Garganacl. It's Garganacl. I picked it. Why? Because it's such a dumb name. Garganacl. Hey, can I see your Garganacl card? Oh, please, will you trade me your Garganacl card? Okay, listen, my son just got the best Christmas present. It was his very own Garganacl. I can't help it. Okay, by the way, if you think that's crazy, I want you guys to know where Garganacl evolves from. Knackle Stack. So, if you have the entire run of Knackle Stack and Garganacl, you're sitting pretty, folks. And by the way, the number is 104. So, here's the deal. If you misspell this, you're out. You're out. Don't make a typo. Don't let autocorrect get into this. Garganacl, Garganacl. Garganacl number 104. That's the information for this week's giveaway. Dan, can you talk about the this whole concept of spec cards? Okay, ace spec cards.
Yeah.
Because they're telling you that it says it's a very powerful item card, but a deck is limited to a single one.
Yeah. So that was something to do in the Black and White era, were ace spec cards. They were over a few sets, and yeah, like you said, it was not just, you were limited to 1 copy. Like with normal cards, you're limited to 4 copies of a certain card, or 4 cards that are sharing a name in terms of Pokemon. But ace specs, it's not even just that you were limited to 1 copy; it's that you could only have 1 ace spec total in your entire deck. It's the same as the gold stars, which a lot of people remember from the EX era. The Pokemon Gold Stars. They're very, very collectible, but they were powerful in the game because they were, again, limited to, you could have 1 gold star in your deck. And it's the same as Radiant Pokemon. In the last few sets, you can only have 1 total in your deck. That generally meant that there were only a couple of ace specs that really saw play, because it had to be, the top tier ace spec in order to get that 1 single slot in your deck. There were a few more that, likely, if it was either 1 of each or there was less of a restriction, there might have been some more interesting decks built around them. But I think it was really just Computer Search, Scramble Switch, and Dowsing Machine, I think, were the only ones that really saw competitive play, as well as I can remember. But it was just another special subset of cards, basically. I mean, it wasn't a subset, they were still within the main numbering of the set, but there was 2 or 3 per set for the sets that they had them. and they were cards that, again, like some others, only came in foil. There was no reverse foil versions or anything like that, and they had their own special frames with a spec written on the around the borders of the artwork and stuff. They're very cool looking cards.
Very neat. And actually read something, Dan. It's kind of fun for me because, I'm picking stuff at random for us to discuss in the podcast, and I'm counting on your expertise to get us through. But it was really neat for me to read that it said that ace spec cards are supposed to return to the TCG in 2024. So that's really cool to think about something making a full circle kind of, reappearance 12 years later. Especially because I guess there's only something like 13 of these ace spec cards in existence from the older years.
Yeah, it was a very low number of them that actually got released. It's similar to the Gold Stars and the Radiants because they have this limitation on deck building. I guess it's you don't want newer players to be pulling too many of them because they can't put them all in their deck is one thing. And they kind of want to keep it special when it's got this cool restriction around deck building, the idea that they're supposed to be powerful. You want them to have some sort of exclusivity, and you want them to stay rarer and not have it be where there's hundreds of them like rainbow rares where people get sick of seeing them. So it'll be interesting to see when they come back if they do reprint any of the older ones, because I know people would definitely still play computer search and dowsing machine whatever in decks today. They're still definitely powerful enough cards to go in there. So it'll be fun to see if they reprint any of them, if they're all entirely new ones.
Dan, do you know why they named? I mean, obviously, I know there's some naming conventions because sets, as we've talked about, convert over from the Japanese to English. But do we know why there's 3 sets, Plasma, Blast, Storm, and Freeze, that are all Plasma something? Is there a particular tie-in to those 3 sets to the word Plasma?
Yep, so Team Plasma is the evil, villainous team in the games of that era. So in the older eras, you'll know Team Rocket. You'll have heard of them because there was the set Team Rocket Returns. Team Plasma was that generation's equivalent of Team Rocket. So within the black and white games, you were fighting against Team Plasma as you went through the story. So these 3 sets, it was based a lot around Team Plasma, and you had cards with blue borders, which were Pokemon or items that were owned by Team Plasma or were members of Team Plasma. And there were a lot of trainers and stuff set up where they only worked with Team Plasma Pokemon, that kind of thing. So it was all tied into that team from the games. They had kind of this 3 set overarching story and interlinking cards.
And why do they focus? I know this is, again, my questions are dumb, folks, so please, we know that. Just, give a break, right? I mean, let's say I wasn't here right now. I poofed into Magic and I was gone. I couldn't even ask dumb questions. I couldn't even ask any questions. So please, Dan, why do they make a name of something around the villainous team? Why if the Plasma's the villainous team, why do we get 3 sets with Plasma in the name and not the good guys?
Well, so generally it's because the good guys in the games don't really have that set identity, because the good guys it's your character. You name your character when you start the game, but a lot of the good guys, like the friends and stuff, are cards within the game, within the TCG. A lot of, gym leaders will often get their cards, or I think in the latest few generations, guys like Hop, and I think at the time it was Bianca was one of the protagonists of the game. So they got their own cards. It was just that because the story is following your player's character, they don't really have that kind of set identity that would lend itself to an entire set. So normally it's the way it works with a generation is often it'll be where the first few sets of a generation, it'll just be the big pull or the big draw of the sets will be introducing all of these new Pokemon. But once you've got all of the Pokemon introduced, they kind of need a new gimmick, they need a new marketing point, a new sales tactic, basically, for sets coming out. So that's where in original generations, they did Team Rocket, which introduced Dark Pokemon, and then we had Team Magma versus Team Aqua. In Generation 3, they were the evil team. From that point was Team Magma and Aqua. You saw them throughout the story. And then obviously we've got Team Rocket Returns because of the remakes of the original games. So then Team Plasma, because Team Plasma had this huge connect of their own style of Pokemon, that was just, it was the draw towards those few sets, is this whole branding of certain special types of Pokemon that worked because of Team Plasma.
Okay. Is there one? I don't remember which one's the most expensive box to buy. But
Of the Plasmas, I would guess it was Blast.
Oh, the Blast. Okay.
Of the 3 Plasma sets, I haven't actually checked, but I know at the time, Blast, I believe, had the most playable cards in it. So I think Blast was the one people wanted. Although Plasma Storm does have the secret rare Charizard, so that may have pulled Storm back quite a lot if people are wanting the box because it might have this Charizard in it.
Plus, it also had a couple of those other cards you mentioned, like the Scramble Switch and another one, I think.
Yeah, it did. I just remember at the time Blast being hyped because of Genesect. I think was a lot of people were wanting that out of Blast, but it may be that Storm has recovered some way because of the Charizard and stuff. That's what people are wanting from the Plasma sets.
Okay. When I was reading this stuff, I noted a couple of things. Maybe you can just comment on these, and if this comment is still the case. So these were labeled under things like trivia. So and they were under the discussion of EX cards and evolving into Mega EX and some of that stuff. So
Mega EX started in X and Y, I believe. I don't think they had Megas as far back as the Plasma sets.
Okay. So one thing said Pikachu EX is the only Pokemon featured as a Pokemon EX not to be fully evolved, barring Mega Evolution and Primal Reversion.
Yeah, so Pikachu had an EX card in... I can't even remember what set it was in. Pikachu had an EX card. Normally, EX cards were reserved for Pokemon characters that were fully evolved, or if they were basic Pokemon, they were Pokemon that didn't have a further step of evolution. But obviously, Pikachu evolves into Raichu. The Primal Reversions were... That was a subset of EX cards in somewhere in the XY era. I'd have to look a bit further into that to tell you exactly where they were, but that's what that refers to. But in general, it's just because Pikachu is an EX, has an EX card, but still can evolve.
Okay. And coming back to the Plasma Storm set, the those last 3 cards, those full art textures, Charizard, Blastoise, and whatever the last one is, they really are beautiful cards. I don't know what they go for or sell for these days, but if someone was trying to put together a collection of just shinies, or I always say shinies, but it's not shinies, it's golds, full art textures.
Well, those Pokemon are actually shiny Pokemon. The Charizard and the Blastoise are shiny Pokemon. They're the alternate color Pokemon.
Got it. But they really are neat. So
the Charizard I think is definitely high. It's I think over 500 is what you're looking to pay for a Charizard.
Is that maybe is that the only Charizard? Forgetting metal, there's probably a metal one, maybe, but I don't know. Maybe there is or isn't. But forgetting metal, is there other Charizards that come to mind that are textured full art? Because it really is unique. Like, I don't recall seeing a lot of gold bordered Charizard cards, that way.
Yeah, so I don't think there are other gold. I mean, if I figure out that there is, I'll make sure I put pictures on screen. But I don't believe there are other gold bordered Charizards. Interestingly, every copy of the Charizard is an error card. It was the attack. Its second attack has a fighting energy symbol rather than a fire energy symbol. But it was one that was never corrected. I remember when the set first came out, when it initially dropped, the Charizards were going for quite a lot of money relative to cards at the time, because a lot of people were expecting it to be corrected in future print runs. So people were holding it thinking that the error version would be a lot rarer because it would get corrected later, and people would be seeking out the error versions. But then in the end, they never actually corrected it. So every copy of the Charizard is the error.
That's really interesting. I'd never heard that before. Why do you think? What is the impetus behind cards that have that situation and get corrected and ones that don't. I mean, that's obviously a similar kind of thing happened in one of the very early sets, correct?
Yeah, the Blaine's Charizard from one of the gym sets has a fighting symbol instead of a fire symbol, but then was corrected in a very late print run. I think it just comes down to
Money.
how early TPCI notice it. Basically, would be my guess, because obviously when we get our first print run of the set released, it's like maybe not so much now, but back then, once the first print run is out and in stores, they've probably already finalized and ordered the remaining print runs that they're going to do. So I say nowadays they're doing more and more print runs and they have their own in-house printing, so maybe that's a bit different. But if they didn't notice the error in-house, they may have finalized and sent off, signed off on future print runs before anyone in the public brought this error to their attention. So they may not have had a chance to change it. And, they, like I say, if they didn't notice it themselves, that may be a reason why it didn't. But like you say, it could be money and stuff too. I would especially think on something like this where it's the golden one, so the golden cards get their own special sheet. Potentially, the gold cards had a ton of sheets printed with print run 1 that weren't all used, and then they have to print more of the rest of the set to fit those in. But that's just speculation on with Pokemon. I know with other card games, it's been that way. Like I know I've talked to some people on Lord of the Rings collecting. Bit of backstory in this: there's one Lord of the Rings set that contains a full non-first edition set, basically, but the foils from that set are all first edition. And they said it was because when they did the print run, they had printed so many extra foils that they still had enough foils ready for the second print run that they didn't need to print them again. With the Charizard being that highest level of rarity, potentially it was something like that where, because of pack distribution, they had some of the first print run left over and didn't need to reprint that sheet. But like I say, that's a possibility. It is just speculation, though.
Okay. All right. When I suggested doing Plasma Storm last night in a message to you, your comment came back something like, "That's a cool set, a fun set, whatever." So finish this segment with your, anything you have to say, please, about, you know, what resonates with you about this set. What was that comment based on when I said, when I said that and you said, "Hey, yeah, fun, cool set," or whatever?
Um,
What came to your mind?
a lot of it is just because of that whole the idea of the plasma Pokemon running through the 3 sets, those blue bordered cards. And this was actually where I had a bit of downtime off Pokemon. Boundaries Cross, the set before this, and the 3 plasma sets were sets where I didn't buy any boxes of them when they actually came out. I bought boxes of Dragons Exalted, and then I think I bought boxes of Legendary Treasures afterwards. But I think it was just because of both a little bit of money and um, just getting a little bit fatigued with the game somewhat. And I think these sets came right after, looking at the dates. Yeah, it was between the second Hawaii Worlds and then Vancouver Worlds. So I think I was putting a lot of money to those 2 trips. Um, so for me, those sets have always still kind of had that bit of somewhat of a mystique in the way that some of the older sets did, just because those weren't ones that I personally opened very much of. I only opened a few packs when they were in box sets and things like that. So I've always been a bit intrigued by those, and they're definitely on my my lists to be trying to build up sets at some point. But I think the Plasma sets and Boundaries Cross are the only sets from Diamond and Pearl onwards, like to modern day, where I've never opened a booster box. I think every other set I've opened at least one sealed booster box of the sets all the way up to present day. So,
And you're not saying that as a backhanded kind of passive aggressive underneath the surface way of showing me that you've opened more boxes than me, correct?
no, because you still have all the sets done, and all these other sets that I've opened boxes of, I'm nowhere near finished.
Okay. All right. Dan, I don't open any boxes because
I know.
it's the gambler in me that hasn't been gambling since I was 18 and realized a propensity to have a trait that's not particularly great when it comes to gambling.
Yeah.
Um, Very cool, Dan. We're good. We're good. Thank you for indulging me on Plasma Storm today. As we always say, those of you, including Craig Holmes, oh my goodness, who would like to let us know about your experiences, your knowledge of Plasma Storm, something you find that's unique, even if it's throw an extra couple of comments into the podcast or a picture or two. I can't wait for Dan to show in the pictures. He's repeatedly referred to this idea of blue bordered plasma cards. So I can't wait to see what those are in particular. Of course, they're in the set, but I had no idea that I should be looking at those in particular, and now I'll be looking for them. So thank you for that, Dan. I'm going to throw one more thing in here in this, which does not relate to this segment. I had an idea this week. I'd like to get your opinion on it, and if Dan won't give me an opinion, that's fine. It's like trainer deck A or B. I can't force him, guys. I can't just fly out on a plane and commit him on a 1050 to some mental institution. I don't know if it's a 1050. It's probably a 5050 or a 5051, or somebody put the number in there. So Dan, I'm thinking that we should have a new segment. How easy for me to have a segment because I don't have to record it. Where we pick every week. We have a chance. It's got to be someone who's willing to do it with us, or don't bother to enter. And you get to win a 5-minute segment on our podcast with us as a fan, where we interview you and you talk about your collection a little bit. Now, I would like to do that. I don't know that Dan will let me do that. So, Dan, is that a possibility? Is it too much work? Could we do it once a week, or would it only be once a month because you just can't handle it? And other than that, the other question is, no matter what Dan says, guys, what do you guys think about that? Because it would be even more involving with our wonderful audience and friends, and I would love to see that. So, and I love to hear about different ways and different things and different opinions. And you'd only have 5 minutes, so you better talk fast or get off. Dan, what do you think?
I mean, we could do it. We could try, and if that's something you want to do, we can try and figure it out. Yeah. I guess it might mean just we'd have to record the main bit of the podcast with us and then figure out a time where we can do the 5-minute interview basically. But yeah, I'm sure we could work that out. I'd say definitely not every week, especially because we do want to start doing having more like guests on for full episodes. But yeah, we can figure that out if that's what you want to do.
Yeah. Hey guys, do you think if you guys think it's a really dumb idea, it wouldn't be the first time I've been told. You know what? The first time I asked, not the first time, but the first 17 times I asked girls on dates, everyone said it was a dumb idea. So I didn't give up. Persistence is the key to success, unless you're never successful, and then all your persistence doesn't pay off. Sometimes I speak in circular logic. My therapist says that I should continue to do that, so it gives her a chance to stay employed by evaluating me on a weekly or monthly basis. So we're going to try to do this, but if you don't think it's a good idea, let us know, and then we won't do it. Pretty simple stuff. Dan, I could move right into a rant or not. I don't care. It's up to you.
Do you have a rant you want to do this week?
No, I don't, but I'm still going to do it just out of pure obligation. So I'm going to sit here for about 2 minutes, Dan. My rant's going to be 2 minutes long, so you don't have to go anywhere. We could just keep going, and I could just say something or not, and then we could move on to look what I found.
All right, you do your rant. I'm still going to take my headphones off. You do a rant.
Okay. All right, Dan.
Oh, good. David has a rant coming on.
So, guys, I'm going to sit here right now, and I'm going to tell you, there's an obligation when you have an obligation to do a rant every week. It means you've got, or even every week, you've got a lot of anger inside you. And I really do, but I don't. But I just want to say this to all of you. I can't do this alone. And so if you're not stepping up to help me right now, I don't know why you call yourself my friend. I don't know why you call yourself my enemy, my person that watches me, my audience, my fellow Pokemon community collector. I don't understand it at all. Don't fool yourself. You're looking in a mirror as much as I'm looking in a mirror. You're seeing something completely different. I'm not even seeing the same thing you're looking at or seeing in my way. But I've never been looking in a mirror since I was a child. You know, in my 20s, I didn't look in a mirror. Truth be told, I thought I was so ugly, I wouldn't look at myself. Now I look occasionally. Sometimes I actually think I look good, but I'm fooling myself, guys. I have no reason to think I could look. I'm 62 years old. I got nothing going on in my life. I'm standing around. I got people, coming at me from every angle from the direction of the day. And I can't even sleep at night. When I do sleep at night, I'm up several times to have to go to the bathroom. That's what happens when you get old. You can take all the pills in the world. I take pills. Some of you take pills. Shouldn't take as many pills, but do take the ones for anti-anxiety and anti-depression because they're out there, right? It's sort of like saying, hey, if I couldn't get the best burger, I'd get another burger and I wouldn't eat a burger. But we all love burgers, so you do what you got to do. The thing about it is, when I consider you guys to be helpers of mine, I'm not talking about Santa and the elves, right? It's not an employee-employer kind of work relationship. This is about friendship. This is about putting it on the line for someone, a fellow human being, a fellow collector that needs you. Are you helping me as much as you could be? Should you be helping me more? I think you should, but I have no right to think that, but I still think you should, and I don't see why you wouldn't. Why wouldn't you help me? I would help you. You can call me, you can DM me, you can text me, you can message me, fly to my home. We'll we'll have a drink by the pool. I don't know. I mean, maybe you don't drink. We'll just have, like hors d'oeuvres by the pool. It's fine. But then you would help me with this or that or the next thing. Maybe it's reels. Maybe it's about marketing campaigns. Maybe it's about how to ride a bicycle and teach people how to ride a bicycle. Okay, maybe it's got Pokemon cards in the spokes of the wheels like the old baseball card days. But see, I can't do it alone. And I try to do it with Dan, but you guys see what I'm working with. Thank God he doesn't have the headphones on. The guy's a bit of an anomaly. I mean, if the pink hair doesn't give it away, maybe it's the constant sickness. And then it's his life. Look at his life, guys. I'm not putting him down. He's a wonderful man. I love Dan. Dan's, I said in the beginning of the podcast, he's a Mackem. Maddie told me to say that. And Dan will hear that later when he's editing, and then he'll wonder why that came from. So you can look it up. It's somebody from a community in the UK. But Dan can only help so much because he also has a life. But I don't have a life, guys, and neither do you. None of you have lives. We can share our non-lives together. This is not about one of us. This is about all of us. This is about what's going to be big, what's going to blow up, what's going to be the next viral sensation. I can tell you it's not going to be me, but it can't even possibly be if it's not going to be for you guys, okay? So when I tell you this, when it comes to cooking a dinner, when it comes to taking a trip, when it comes to sitting there and cashing your paycheck, writing out a thank you note or a forgiveness note to your best friend, do you do it alone? No, you don't do it alone unless you do. And are you doing it alone without an entry of help? Maybe you should be. I don't know. But you shouldn't be doing it alone if you don't have to. None of this should be alone. Do you hug yourself alone? Do you sleep alone at night? Some of you do, and for that, I'm sorry. I don't know. There's you can swipe on apps and stuff. There's stuff you can do. But I'll tell you one thing that none of us do alone. We don't enter and exit this hobby alone. Okay, we do those things. We don't participate in this hobby alone, right? And that's why we have Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. We're together in all of this. So will you guys be together with me? Don't leave me alone. Don't leave me alone. When those lights get turned out at night, I don't want to be left alone. Step up for me if you can't step up for you. Is that too much to ask? Yeah, maybe it is, but I asked. I created a vulnerability here today, put myself out there, and that's what I did. And I'm hoping one of you, two of you, all of you, a bunch of you can come through. Don't do this for Dan. We do enough for Dan. Do this for me, for you, for us. Let's see if I can make this thing.
You done?
Dan, I was done the minute I started. I was completely done. There was no reason for that at all. Okay.
No, there was not.
There's
way
not.
More than 2 minutes as well.
Fine. I'm not a great time teller. I'm not a great soothsayer. I'm not a great crystal ball determine. Okay, fine. Do you want to do look what I found?
Let's do look what I found.
Okay.
What cards have our hosts found today?
All right, so we're back on to cards again. This is look what I found where me and David are showing off a card or two from our collections. David, what do you got this week?
So Dan, this is something that I posted. I just thought you might talk a little bit more about it if you can. Some people said, can you ask Dan to talk more about it? And you know what? So I posted this on Instagram. I won an auction about a week or so ago, the PWCC auction. That was a card from Pax of Norway that I talked about. It says on top of it, Dan will post a picture. I already have it in my Instagram. Look at my Instagram sometime. I try to post some nice pics. You'll like them. 2003 Pokemon Black Star Cello Pack. Kyogre EX-Australian version. It's PSA graded near mint to mint 8 because I care. I don't grade, but it's graded. I had to buy it that way because Pax of Norway submitted it that way. So Dan, what is this card and why do I feel it's so rare? It's got these lines at the bottom that make it different than the cards that most people find in their collections. And then on top of that being the rare part, it's the sealed part that you don't see much these days. So what do you got to say, Dan?
Yeah, so this card, people will have seen the card around. It is Black Star Promo 001. I believe then 002 was the matching Groudon. They came in the non-foil and the foil versions, and they came in a lot of different magazines and stuff all around the world. The main difference is, with this special one, it doesn't have a dot code on the bottom. So people know with the EX era cards, you would scan them in the e-reader. We've talked a lot about this in the last couple of weeks, actually, about scanning cards in an e-reader device. But these ones don't have any data on the bottom, so they can't be scanned. They just have these lines instead. So it's interesting that it says Australian, because I first became aware of them. I heard that they were released somewhere in Europe, I think somewhere in Scandinavia. There was some magazine that gave them out. And then I also heard that they came out in I think it was K-Zone is the name of the magazine in Australia. I've managed to get myself a few copies over the years, but it's been a lot of looking for them. When I found out that they existed, it was basically just putting like 001 Kyogre EX into eBay and then looking through the pictures on every single listing to find ones that didn't have the dot codes on and just buy those and hope that the picture was accurate. Because when I first found out about them, no one was listing them separately. Now I think they're a little bit more known about, and because of that, a few more copies have made it to market. It's a bit easier now to get some, near mint copies of the actual cards. But I would say the number of actual sealed copies between the Kyogre and the Groudon that I've ever seen are single figures. These ones, again, they're just not things that pop up very often at all. Like I say, they would have been in a magazine. It would have been, this card would be in like the plastic wrap on a magazine. The majority of people either would have not kept the card or would have just opened the cellophane on the card again straight away. So that is what makes this one so rare. And especially what makes the sealed version so rare is just that there were not very many countries which got this specific version of the card. And for a long, long time, people were not aware of the variation, or at least were not looking for the variation. So a lot of them probably changed hands, and people may have bought, like, even if people kept them sealed out the magazine, people may have bought them for their collections, not realized the difference, opened the cellophane and put them straight into binders. It's just one of those things, like we talked about those upside down stamped promos that you got still sealed. We talked about those a long time ago on the podcast, where it's one of those ones where the fact that so many people would have opened them and not known what to be looking for is what's caused this rarity.
Yeah. So again, I did all the same things, looking on eBay and just typing in and having to scan every one for those lines on the bottom. But the sealed ones, again, I've only seen maybe 2 or 3, including the one that supposedly I never saw or whatever, was from that Albert Swain character in the UK that tried to rip me off, and then finally got my money back. And ironically paid almost exactly the same amount all in for this card than I was going to pay back then. It's so interesting because nowadays, Dan, I think that people know so much more. The hobby has grown so much in sophistication that most people, and clearly there's still newbies who don't understand the value of keeping cards, in the seals. I understand the grading piece. There are people who just want to break everything out and see if they can get a PSA or a CGC 10 or pristines and try to get more money with it that way. But I found it so interesting that recently you had the Pokemon Van Gogh Museum Pikachu felt hat promos, and there was all of a sudden, were there going to be more prints? Were there not going to be more prints? And so the price was all over the place, and then all of a sudden there was this huge amount of unsealed copies that hit Facebook that gave everybody the clue that they were counterfeit. Because everybody was saying, well, if you were not smart enough to keep them sealed, why would you be breaking them out? And why would they have quantities in single ripped out of the pack condition? So, but back in this day, nobody knew that. And it's very different than today versus back then. And things really did probably get opened a lot more just by kids and people that were involved and didn't think anything of it.
I mean, I will say, for even the Van Gogh promos, I have mine here, but I'm going to be opening mine to put them into my binder.
Don't do it.
I always do. I
Why?
like to have because I like to have my binder set up that way, where all the cards are just individually sleeved rather than being in their their original cello packet. I mean, I can understand why if you are trying to resell it, or if it's something you are going to resell at some point, keep it sealed in the original. But like for my collection, I like to have them where they're all just in a sleeve in the binder, rather than having because if you put them in a binder, you have to like fold the top and bottom of the cello packet, and I don't like how that looks. I always like.
Dan, is there a number of people? If I can get 25 people to comment and say, Dan, don't do it. You're a foolish man, Dan. It's the worst financial decision. It's the worst thing to do for that card. The card deserves better. If I can get 25 comments on the podcast, will you not do it?
No. There's no amount of comments that are going to stop me doing it, because if I was deciding I was going to start collecting these things sealed, I then have to go back and replace a ton of other stuff that I've already opened.
I think it's closed-minded, Dan. I think that you should think about this in the larger sense of pleasing your audience. What about, would you get a tattoo of the card, the Van Gogh Pokemon card felt hat on your body in the cello wrap tattoo, and then you can have that one, and then you could just put the open one in the collection?
Well, okay. I'm not getting a tattoo of the card in the cello wrap. I might get a tattoo of the Van Gogh Pikachu. Look, it's kind of a cool tattoo idea. Maybe I'll just do that.
Okay, and I tried. I'm not. I think this isn't the real you talking. It's the sick you that's not tired enough to accept my craziness. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe it is.
Let's finish the other tattoo first before we put the Van Gogh felt guy on.
Yeah, I'm probably not getting any more tattoos for a little while.
All right. Yeah, we better spend the money on cards. Okay. Yeah. Dan, what did you find?
So what I found is I have finally been putting away some cards that I bought and traded for at my last card show. And two cards I got the very nice Alt Art Gengar VMAX from Fusion Strike, and I got the Rainbow Chandelure VMAX. And the reason these two are cool is it's the final two cards I actually needed to finish off the Fusion Strike full set. So everything that you could pull from packs, those were the last two cards that I needed. Still need a couple of variants. I'm still working on the prize pack stuff for that set. But basically everything else I have for that set. The only stuff I'm missing is some prize pack stuff and then a champion stamped quick ball, which I'm not sure if I'll ever get or not. I have a top 8 one. But it was nice to be finished with at least the stuff from the booster packs. It's nice to have a full set complete just from some trading and some buying at the last card show.
Yeah, that's very cool, Dan. Congratulations, bud. Very nice. I like Fusion Strike. It's a nice, big old set.
It's a very big set. But not too many secret rares. It's a lot bigger than other sets around it, but has way less secret rares, so it's actually easier to finish than, say, Evolving Skies, which has less cards overall, but 2 or 3 times the amount of secret rares.
Got it. Yeah. Okay, why don't we do TCG in the news?
Sure.
Any Pokemon in the news lately?
So TCG in the news, all I've got this week is a bit more, product announcement. Few different things have been announced. One of the coolest looking ones is a Paldea Adventure Chest, which is coming out sometime next year, which comes with quite a lot of different promos, it looks like. So it comes with a few EX promos, plus a very nice full art Pikachu. I'll put some, obviously, images up for that one. It looks really, really sweet. Okay, 7 promo cards total, plus a squishy toy Pikachu and a mini portfolio. 7 promos is very, very nice for one of these chests, so looking forward to that one.
Is there a suggested retail, Dan, or they didn't say that yet?
$50, I think, is the suggested retail on that one. Yeah, $50.
Got it.
We've had the announcement of the 4 different Worlds decks, the World Championship decks, which come with, the different backs and then the silver borders and the winner's signatures on them. We're getting Lugia, Mew, God of War, and Kyogre. So both Vance and Toad from Masters are getting theirs. And then we have Gabriel Fernandez and Xiaotong Yen, Senior Division Champion and Junior Division Champion. That's what they're from. So we've got those 4 coming out next year. And then final announcement, we've had an announcement of a product called Combined Powers Premium Collection. This is one I was waiting on the announcement for. So remember the TCG Premium Collections? A lot of people have seen there was the $400 giant boxes that come with 3 decks and lots of other accessories. There was talk of the cards from those decks coming out in a future product later. Some people were saying that they believed it was only going to be the exclusive cards, the new cards, which had no other versions. It wasn't going to be the reprints of all the vintage cards. That's what this product is. This product has the Lugia, Ho-Oh, Suicune EX, and it has the Mr. Mime, which was in those decks, which it was the first time that Mr. Mime's been printed in English. And then it has some Pokemon Tool cards in this product as well. But this product means that not all of the cards from that giant history premium collection, whatever it's called, are going to be reprinted. So it means that I am going to have to go and open mine, because we bought 2 of those and we said we'll keep them sealed until we know what the status of these reprints is. But it does mean that most of those decks are now going to be exclusive to that product. So that's a good one to know for anyone who was holding on that and not quite sure what to do with it yet.
Okay, if you ever do, so I have not. It appears to me that I bought a pre-order on that $400, $425, $450 3-deck ultra premium collection set, that thing. I don't see it in my possession. I think it's supposed to ship December 29th.
Okay.
It might be from Walmart or something like that, or Best Buy. I don't know. So I have no idea what's in it. I have no idea what the response has been to it. What are the cards reprinted of? Can you? And I'm presuming you haven't done a video on it yet, since you were saying you're not sure.
Yeah, I haven't done my video yet on it. So what the cards are, there's 3 60-card decks in there. Some of them are these newer cards, which are the EX cards, the Ho-Oh, Lugia, and Suicune. And then there are reprints of vintage cards. So there's the Venusaur, Blastoise, and Charizard lines back from base set. They just have this new layout, new foiling. There's a lot of vintage trainers and stuff in it too. But all of those cards are marked up as not being legal for play. But they do still have, regular backs and everything, so you can still play with them as decks. They're just not tournament legal. And then there's, fancy damage counters and fancy markers and stuff in it. I've seen them, they've actually been reselling for quite a bit lower than their original $400 price tag. I think you can if you're trying, you can probably get it maybe even close to about the 250 mark now. Definitely lower than 300. It seems you can buy them for. From what I heard, a lot of people bought, or some people bought a lot of them, hoping that the trainers, at least the reprints of the trainers, would be legal in tournaments, and then were kind of stuck with them when they found out that they weren't. So I think people were hoping that they would have could have played with those trainers. But I think the reception's been decent to it. I think the people who wanted it are getting what they want out of it. But I think it just hasn't had that kind of maybe mass market appeal that Pokemon was hoping for. I don't think it's appealing to as many people as they thought it would.
What makes Pokemon price that at $400? So when you talk about the mass market appeal that they hope they would want, etc., is there actually anything to the card quality, the card stock, the reprint nature, the holographic foil? Is there something about the cards that they're the more expensive ones that are printed on different sheets that would actually, the reason I ask you this is because I don't feel like Pokemon is all about trying to rip people off by just coming up with a box that's that expensive without actually their costs involved in it being somewhat expensive as well. Is there?
So I honestly think that in terms of the cost for Pokemon, things like the damage counters and the special markers will have actually cost Pokemon more to make than these new foil cards. I mean, it is, as far as I can tell, exclusive foiling. I don't think the foil appears on any other cards in any other product. But the rest of the stuff in there, it's quite large plastic items for damage counters and things like that. And from what I know of making that kind of stuff, I think that's where Pokemon's production costs would be in the creation of those rather than in the actual creation of the cards.
Okay. And I mean, is it when you look back at the Charizard UPC collection or whatever, I guess that one wasn't. That one just went up in price. So let's put aside that question. What's the next most expensive thing that comes to mind of a premium box type collection? Not a booster box. So what else comes to mind outside of this $400 item?
Honestly, nothing other than those ultra premium collections where you got like the metal cards and a ton of booster packs.
Okay.
I can't think of any other card based product that has been anywhere near this, really.
Yeah. All right. Interesting. This just really makes you wonder, that what would justify this kind of expense, and if, again, will they
I,
ever think about doing it differently the next time if it really didn't take off the way they'd hoped it was going to?
yeah, it's strange because obviously all of the cards, apart from maybe 3 or 4, they appeal only to collectors because it's a new foil type. You can't use them in tournaments or anything. And then all of this extra stuff that's in there, like the special board and these really high quality printed damage counters and stuff, that stuff only appeals to players. So it just feels like it's at a crossroads. Half of the product is intended for one audience and half of the product is intended for another audience, and it doesn't seem like there's that much of an overlap. The only person who's going to really want all of this is someone who is a big collector but also is a very active player, and it just feels like people are one or the other. It doesn't feel like there's too many people who are trying to do both of those things.
Okay. So for anybody out there, this is just a curiosity question that I have. If any of you know, Dan may know as well, but he may not know. So one of you will know. What do you try to find out for me? What the distribution cost, the distributor cost? What did a distributor have to pay to get this set? I would really be curious to know that. Not what they were selling it for, but they had to pay $300 and then they were selling it for 400. They had to pay 350 or 275 or whatever. I would just love to know that.
I think general like local game store price would have been around $240 because I know general local game stores pay about 60% of MSRP, so it would have been about 240 they paid against a $400 MSRP. Obviously, places like Walmart and Best Buy and stuff get way bigger discounts, so they would have paid a lot less than that, I would imagine. But that's where I believe an LGS would be, and that's like your standard small-ish LGS, not an LGS that's buying 50 or 60 of them. They might get more of a discount. Just your average game store that is getting in 4 or 5 copies of this, they're probably paying about $240 to their distributor.
All right. Good to know. What's funny is what you've told me in this entire discussion is that I am not going to have to worry about eventually getting that set. It's not like it's going to disappear on me because like all the good ones do. I'm going to throw in my TCG in the news. I was speaking via message to my good friend Peak DeChew Colt, and he had given me a list of the upcoming Collecticons for this coming 2024 year, starting in February with Dallas, Texas, all the way out to November in Houston, Texas. And there's about 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12? Is there one every single month? June, July, August? Maybe there is. Not every month.
Quite a lot of them, I think, yeah.
So here's my question, guys. We've talked a little bit on the podcast about Collecticons. Dan's always said it's not something he's really ever been to before, potentially had an interest in. I just want to hear from you folks about your experiences with Collecticons. Have you been to any Collecticons? What are they about? What do you most enjoy? What do you least enjoy? Are you planning to go to any in this coming year? Are they growing in popularity, waning in popularity? And again, versus other things you could allocate your travel dollars or hobby dollars to. Have you found this whole Collecticon experience to be one that is valuable or not? Or maybe you haven't and you're just figuring out what you want to do for the coming year. Please let us know in the comments because I'd really just like to understand more about it and get to hear more about you guys and what you think.
Cool. Yeah, it'll be interesting to hear from people about that. So I'm sure there'll be a lot to talk about. I was going to say next week, next episode, whenever next episode is going to be, because I can tell you we're not recording an episode on Christmas Eve from the farm, because it will be absolute chaos down there. Hopefully we can try and record something maybe between Christmas and New Year, and then try and get one out then, and then be back on our regular schedule at the start of January. Sound good to you, Dave?
Yes, hashtag no excuses, Dan, honestly, okay? I'm starting to see a little bit of slippage in your work ethic and your excuse rationale, and I won't put up with it, and neither will our audience, and neither for sure will Stephen Kassoon, who waits for this every week because he's just like all the rest of our audience. They all do. Okay, so Dan, thank you so much, my friend. I'm not going to say Merry Christmas or Happy New Year yet. I'm going to wait to say it at a later time to put pressure on you to try to do something without not doing anything between now and then. Okay?
All right. I will say Christmas Eve at the farm, I cannot record. It will be pandemonium. There is any amount of stuff planned. Maybe around the 27th, 28th is when I'm hoping we can try and get a recording in. But hey, we'll figure something out, and I will hopefully be well enough to record more non-podcast videos before we travel, so that I have a lot to pump out, so at least you're getting some content from me. But if we don't see you before Christmas, have a Merry Christmas, and if we don't see you before New Year, have a great New Year. Hopefully we'll see you at least before then, but you never know.
You really don't. But I will say the same thing. Happy New Year, Merry Christmas, have wonderful holidays. I just hope, cherish the small things, cherish the little things, cherish the moments. The videos are great and recording everything is great. Be in the moment so you can really enjoy it for all it's worth. And it just sort of takes over your energy, and everything sort of flows positively, notwithstanding the occasional rant that I have. So we appreciate you guys all so much. Tell a friend, tell a loved one, tell an enemy, tell a stranger, tell your therapist, tell anyone you see on a daily basis that Dan needs views, and we look forward to seeing you in the next podcast. Okay.
Yeah. See you later.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Koffee Talks with Dan Norton and David Person, featuring music by More Than Never and artwork by Laura Norton. A special shout out to all of our Patreon members. Join us again next time.
But they don't want you to have a